Mr. Whitfield, step away from the box. Keep your hands where I see.
What is this? What's happening?
The widow's money, Dale. The life insurance you drained for 2 years.
For 25 years, people trusted Marcus Whitfield with their grief, their money, and their dead. Every single one of them was wronged to. And a grieving widow's niece is the reason he's standing here right now.
You know in your heart this is not what it looks like. There is a higher accounting than any
Forged
bad.
power of attorney signed 3 weeks after.
Search your own conscience before you do this, because one day you will answer for it the same as I.
She was not going to get her answer at the pulpit. Within 72 hours of the moment on your screen, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation agents would empty a banker's box in the Grace Covenant Fellowship Church office and pull out a single sheet of paper that would end a 25-year ministry. A forged financial power of attorney, signed in a widow's name, dated 21 days after she buried her husband. $1.6 million, 26 months of withdrawals, a handwritten ledger in his own hand, where every single theft was labeled tithe. Before we go any further, I have to ask you something. How many people right now have signing authority on your parents' accounts, or your grandparents' accounts? Not just view-only access, actual signing authority. Sit with that for a second and drop your answer in the comments. And if you are new to this channel, subscribe now. We cover cases like this every single week, and the ones that hurt the most are the ones that were invited in through the front door. Marcus Cornelius Whitfield was born in Chattanooga, Tennessee on August 14, 1969, at Erlanger Hospital, less than 3 miles from the Alton Park duplex, where his parents would raise him for the first 18 years of his life. His father, Cornelius Whitfield Sr., worked as a machinist at the Tennessee Valley Authority's Chickamauga Dam Operations Facility for 31 years, running a manual lathe through a shift that started at 5:30 every morning. His mother, Verna Whitfield, spent her career in central sterile processing at Erlanger Hospital, running instrument trays through a 280-degree autoclave 5 days a week. They were, by every account, unremarkable in the best sense of that word. Church every Sunday at Mount Canaan Missionary Baptist. Homework at the kitchen table. A screen door that never quite latched. A father who came home in coveralls stained with cutting fluid and washed his hands twice at the utility sink before he would touch his own children. Marcus was the middle of 3. His older sister, Denise, would become a nurse at Memorial Hospital. His younger brother, Anthony, would join the Air Force out of high school and rarely return to Chattanooga, except for funerals. The pulpit found Marcus early. He was 12 the first time he preached, a 5-minute Youth Sunday message on Psalm 23. Pastor Elias Booker at Mount Canaan told Verna Whitfield afterward that her son had the gift. That phrase followed Marcus everywhere for the next 4 decades. He had the gift. Cornelius Sr., who had grown up cutting metal and did not fully trust words as a profession, kept his opinion to himself. Marcus graduated from Howard High School in the spring of 1987, 68th, in a class of 243. His yearbook lists him as a member of the concert choir, the debate team, and something called the Christian Fellowship Circle. Under his senior photo, in place of a quote, there is a Bible reference. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. That fall, he enrolled at Lee University, 40 minutes east in Cleveland, Tennessee. He majored in biblical studies, minored in communications, and worked 20 hours a week at a Shoney's on Keith Street to help pay his tuition. His grade point average when he graduated in 1991 was a 3.4. His college transcripts, later subpoenaed by federal prosecutors, describe him as a student who was, quote, dependable and thoughtful, with strong presentation skills and an unusually mature pastoral instinct for a young man his age. He met Cheryl Booker, no relation to the pastor at Mount Canaan, in his junior year at Lee. They married the summer after graduation at Mount Canaan, on a 94-degree Saturday in June of 1991. Their first child, a daughter they named Kendra, arrived 13 months later. A son, Marcus Jr., followed in 1995. For the first 6 years of his career, Marcus Whitfield was an associate pastor at Second Missionary Baptist in East Ridge, a modest congregation of about 180 members, run by Reverend Ellison Meeks. His starting salary in 1991 was $17,000 a year. By 1994, it had risen to $22,000. He supplemented it by teaching a Wednesday evening class at a small non-denominational Bible institute that met in the basement of a funeral home on McCallie Avenue. That detail matters because that funeral home was where he first learned how death intersects with money, where he sat with families in the front office and watched them sign paperwork through tears they could not stop long enough to read what they were signing. In the spring of 1998, at the age of 28, Marcus Whitfield walked into Reverend Meeks's office and gave 2 weeks' notice. He had, he said, been called to plant a new church of his own. Meeks, according to a statement he gave the TBI years later, wished him well and privately gave the venture about 6 months. Grace Covenant Fellowship opened its doors on September 6, 1998, in a rented storefront on Brainerd Road, between a nail salon and a payday loan office. First Sunday attendance was 41 people. Within 18 months, the congregation had outgrown the storefront and leased a former Piggly Wiggly building 3 blocks east. By 2004, Whitfield had negotiated the purchase of a 9-acre lot off Shallowford Road and broken ground on a 2,000-seat sanctuary. By 2010, Grace Covenant Fellowship was one of the largest independent churches in Hamilton County, with a membership that hovered between 580 and 640, depending on the season. He was, by every metric that congregations measure, successful. His Sunday morning message aired at 8:30 a.m. on WMBW-FM. His Wednesday radio devotional, 5 minutes long, ran on 3 stations across the Tennessee Valley. He sat on the board of the Chattanooga Area Food Bank and the East Tennessee Fellowship of Christian Athletes. He officiated an average of 19 funerals a year. He visited an average of 42 hospital rooms a month. Members of the congregation would later tell investigators, without exception, that Pastor Whitfield was the man you called when someone was dying. That when your husband was in the intensive care unit at Erlanger and the doctors had stopped using the word recovery, Marcus Whitfield was the voice at the other end of the phone telling you he was on his way. That he would sit with you in the family waiting room. That he would pray with you when the machines were switched off. That he would help you plan the service. That he would, in his own words, handle the financial side. That was the phrase. That was the door. To understand what happened to Josephine Marlowe, you have to understand how money moves through a church like Grace Covenant Fellowship. Non-denominational congregations are, financially speaking, some of the least regulated institutions in American public life. There is no diocese. There is no synod. There is no bishop's office auditing the books. The Internal Revenue Service does not require the church to file a Form 99, the way a secular nonprofit would. The state of Tennessee does not require external audits for religious organizations of any size. The only meaningful oversight is whatever the congregation itself chooses to impose. At Grace Covenant Fellowship, that oversight consisted of a 3-person finance committee that met quarterly, reviewed a 1-page summary, prepared by the pastor himself, and voted unanimously to approve it every single time. The committee chair, a retired UPS supervisor named Herbert Fitch, later told federal investigators that in 22 years he had never once asked to see a bank statement. He said, and this is a direct quote from the interview transcript, "We trusted the pastor. There was one signer on the general operating account, Marcus Whitfield. There was one signer on the building fund account, Marcus Whitfield. There was one signer on what the church called the benevolence fund, a discretionary account meant to help members with medical bills, funeral costs, and emergency rent, Marcus Whitfield." In 2019, a young accountant named Simone Rutherford, who had joined Grace Covenant that spring, approached Whitfield after service and suggested that the church consider hiring an outside firm for an annual review. She was, she said later, just trying to be helpful. Whitfield thanked her, told her he would take her suggestion under advisement, and never mentioned it again. She left the congregation 18 months afterward, quietly, over what she described in her own words as a bad feeling she could not put a name to at the time. That bad feeling had a name. It was called an internal control deficiency, and it was the door through which $1.6 million would eventually walk. There is a specific vulnerability in the way American funeral ministry actually works, and Marcus Whitfield understood it better than most pastors his age. When a spouse dies, the surviving partner is, on average, in the worst decision-making condition of their adult life. Grief interferes with executive function. Sleep is broken. Appetite is broken. Well-meaning family members arrive from out of town with casseroles and opinions and then leave again 3 days after the burial. Insurance paperwork arrives in the mail, beneficiary forms, payout letters, documents with signature lines, and no explanation of what happens if the widow signs in the wrong place. Into that vacuum walks the pastor. The pastor has a key to the front door because he has been coming and going for months during the illness. The pastor knows the deceased's middle name and social security number because he helped fill out the death certificate paperwork. The pastor knows which pew the couple sat in for 18 years. The pastor prayed the last prayer over the body. The pastor is not a stranger. The pastor is, in every functional sense, family without the DNA. And when the pastor says, "Let me handle the financial side while you grieve," the widow does not hear a proposal. She hears a mercy. Raymond Marlowe was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer on January 11th, 2021. He was 73 years old, a retired diesel mechanic who had worked 41 years at a freight yard on Amnicola Highway. He had been married to Josephine Marlowe for 47 years. They had one daughter who lived in Tacoma, Washington, and had not spoken to either parent in almost a decade over a dispute nobody in the family could clearly remember the origin of. Raymond and Josephine had attended Grace Covenant Fellowship since 2003. They sat in the 4th row on the left, aisle seats. Raymond served on the parking lot ministry for 6 years, which meant he stood in the church lot in an orange vest every Sunday morning directing traffic. Josephine sang alto in the choir. Marcus Whitfield visited Raymond in the palliative care wing at Memorial Hospital 11 times between the diagnosis and the death. He brought communion in a small silver kit. He read scripture aloud. He held Josephine's hand while Raymond slept. On the 6th visit, according to the federal indictment, he told the couple that when the time came, they should not worry about the paperwork. He would handle the financial side. Those were his exact words. Handle the financial side. Raymond Marlowe died on March 29, 2021, at 4:17 in the morning. Whitfield officiated the funeral 6 days later. The sanctuary was almost full. He preached from 2 Timothy, chapter 4, verse 7. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. 2 weeks after the funeral, Whitfield drove Josephine to a branch of the Tennessee Valley Federal Credit Union on Gun Barrel Road. He explained that the life insurance payout, $1,600,000 from a policy Raymond had carried through his union, was going to require what he called special stewardship. He suggested opening a new account. He suggested adding him as an authorized signer, quote, so that if anything happens to you also, the church can act on your behalf without delay. She agreed. The account was opened on April 19, 2021. The initial deposit was $1,600,018, the exact amount of the life insurance payout, wired directly from the insurance company. 6 days later, Marcus Whitfield created the Covenant Legacy Memorial Fund. That is, he created a name for it. He printed letterhead. He designed a small logo, a dove hovering over an open Bible. He described the fund to Josephine as a tax-advantaged charitable vehicle that would support the church's building expansion in Raymond's name and pay her a monthly annuity of $2,200 for the rest of her natural life. He handed her a one-page document to sign, which she signed without reading, because it was Pastor Whitfield who was handing it to her, and Pastor Whitfield had prayed over her husband's body. The Covenant Legacy Memorial Fund did not exist as a legal entity. It was never registered with the Tennessee Secretary of State. It had no employer identification number, It filed no tax returns. It had no board of directors, no bylaws, and no separate account. It was a name printed on a sheet of paper. The first withdrawal happened on May 3, 2021. $9,400, cashier's check, payable to a home renovation contractor in East Brainerd, just below the federal reporting threshold of $10,000. The second withdrawal happened on May 11th. $8,800, wire transfer to the same contractor. The third withdrawal happened on May 18th. $9,600, wire transfer to a different account, this one in the name of a personal LLC. Whitfield had quietly registered in Georgia in 2019, more than a year before Raymond Marlowe was ever diagnosed. By the end of May 2021, 62 days after Raymond Marlowe's funeral, $47,000 was already gone. The pattern held for 26 months, small amounts, structured deliberately, always under the federal reporting threshold, cashier's checks, wire transfers, electronic bill payments to Whitfield's personal credit cards, cash withdrawals of $9,500 from teller windows at 3 different credit union branches in rotation, so that no single teller would ever see the same face too many times in a row. The money went to a kitchen remodel with a marble island and a 6-burner wolf range, $410,000 in total. A 2022 Cadillac Escalade, $97,000, cash. A 2023 Lincoln Navigator for Cheryl Whitfield, $93,000, cash. A 3-bedroom timeshare unit at a resort near Gatlinburg, $186,000, deed recorded in the name of the Georgia LLC. Credit card balances at 4 different institutions, paid down and then run right back up again, $147,000 in total transfers over the 26-month period. Vacations, furniture, a base boat, briefly, legal fees to an attorney who was helping the LLC purchase a small commercial building in North Chattanooga that Whitfield had told his wife might make a nice second income stream. Every month, on the 15th, Marcus Whitfield deposited $2,200 into Josephine Marlowe's personal checking account. He labeled the deposit, in the memo line, annuity. That was the number he had promised her. He kept that promise in the exact way that a man skimming a river keeps the promise not to drain the ocean. When Josephine called him, occasionally, to ask how the fund was doing, he told her it was growing beautifully. He sent her text messages that federal investigators would later print out and enter into evidence. Sister, the Lord is multiplying it, doing the Lord's work with Raymond's legacy. We are building something beautiful in his name. She saved every single message. She showed them to her niece with pride. Danielle Wexler was Josephine Marlowe's younger brother's daughter. She lived in Louisville, Kentucky, worked as a tax preparer at a regional accounting firm, and drove down to Chattanooga on the first weekend of March 2023 to help her aunt file her federal return for tax year 2022. Josephine, at that point, was 73. She had been living alone for almost 2 years since Raymond's death. She had missed a mortgage payment in January and another one in February. She did not understand why. Her annuity was still arriving every month. Pastor Whitfield had assured her the fund was performing well, and yet the checking account seemed to run out every 3rd week now, and the utility bill was 2 months behind, and there was a certified letter from the bank sitting unopened on the kitchen counter that Josephine had not been able to bring herself to open. Danielle sat at the kitchen table with a laptop, a stack of 109s, and a folder of statements her aunt had brought her from a plastic file box in the hall closet. She worked through the pile methodically. Social Security, a small survivor pension from the freight yard union, a Vanguard account with about $18,000 in it that Raymond had opened in 2009. Nothing else. She stopped. She looked at her aunt. She said, "Aunt Josie, where is the life insurance money?" Josephine explained that Pastor Whitfield was managing it in a memorial fund for Raymond. Danielle asked to see paperwork. Josephine went to the file box and returned with a single sheet of paper. Covenant Legacy Memorial Fund, it said, in Times New Roman font, with a dove and an open Bible printed at the top. Donation acknowledgment. The document thanked Josephine Marlowe for her generous gift of $1,600,000 to the ongoing ministry of Grace Covenant Fellowship. It was dated April 26, 2021. It was signed by Pastor M. Whitfield. There was no tax identification number on it. There was no legal entity name. There was no separate accounting, no yearly statement, no anything at all. There was, Danielle realized as she read it a second time, no fund. There was only a receipt. She did not tell her aunt what she was thinking. She said, "Let me hold on to this, Aunt Josie. I want to make sure we handle it right for the taxes." She put the paper in her bag and drove back to Louisville that night with her hands shaking on the steering wheel through the Sequatchie Valley. On Monday morning, Danielle Wexler took the sheet of paper to an elder law attorney in Louisville named Priscilla Amachi. Amachi read the document, asked 3 questions about the credit union account, asked whether Josephine Marlowe had ever signed a power of attorney, and made 2 phone calls. The first was to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation's Financial Crimes Unit in Nashville. The second was to a friend at the FBI field office in Knoxville. By the following Friday, a joint state and federal investigation was open. Marcus Whitfield had no idea. He preached that Sunday from the book of James, chapter 1, verse 27. Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. Members of the congregation would later remember it was, they thought, one of his better sermons that year. We are heading into the investigation now, and this is the part where the paper trail catches up with him. If you have made it this far, subscribe. This channel does not let stories like this get buried. This is exactly the kind of case that would not have gotten 5 minutes on the local evening news if the niece had not made that phone call to that attorney. Share this video with somebody in your life who has an aging parent or grandparent. They need to hear it. TBI Special Agent Hollis Bergeron opened case file number 23-FC-0184 on the afternoon of March 13, 2023. He was 47 years old, a former forensic accountant who had spent 11 years at the Tennessee Comptroller's Office before moving to state law enforcement in 2018. The first thing Bergeron did was subpoena the account records from Tennessee Valley Federal Credit Union. The records arrived 9 days later in a Redwell folder 2 inches thick. Bergeron laid them out on a conference table on the second floor of the TBI field office on Chapman Highway and started at the beginning. The pattern jumped off the page. Structured withdrawals, always under the $10,000 reporting threshold. Cashier's checks made out to the same contractor in East Brainerd, week after week, for 6 months in 2021. Wire transfers to an LLC registered in Georgia with a mailing address that turned out to be a UPS store mailbox in Ringgold. Electronic payments to American Express, Capital One, Chase, and Discover, always in amounts that matched Marcus Whitfield's personal credit card statements, which Bergeron obtained by a second subpoena that took 11 days. Bergeron interviewed Josephine Marlowe on April 4th, 2023. The interview was recorded. She was calm at first. She sat in her living room in a floral house dress with her hands folded in her lap and answered every question about her husband, about the funeral, about the pastor, about the fund. Bergeron did not raise his voice once. He did not interrupt. He showed her the account records last. Her hands began to shake at page 3. She said, quietly, at page 7, "That is not my signature." Bergeron said, "Ma'am, which one?" She said, "This one, on the power of attorney." The forged financial power of attorney was the document that made the federal case. It was dated April 19th, 2021, 21 days after Raymond Marlowe's funeral. It granted Pastor M. Whitfield sole authority to act on all financial matters for Josephine Marlowe. It bore what appeared to be her signature, in cursive, at the bottom. A questioned document examiner at the FBI Knoxville field office compared the signature on the power of attorney to 23 verified samples of Josephine Marlowe's own handwriting, including her Social Security card application from 1969, her marriage certificate from 1976, and her signature on the previous year's Christmas card list at Grace Covenant Fellowship. The examiner concluded, to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, that the signature on the power of attorney had been traced from a Christmas card Josephine had signed for Marcus and Cheryl Whitfield in December of 2020. That was the first piece of evidence. The second piece of evidence was the ledger. Investigators executed a search warrant at Grace Covenant Fellowship on the morning of May 16, 2023. They also searched Whitfield's home on Shady Grove Drive and his personal LLC's rented mailbox in Ringgold. In the church business office, in a cardboard banker's box on the top shelf of a metal filing cabinet behind Whitfield's desk, agents recovered a spiral-bound notebook. The notebook contained 63 pages of handwritten entries, in Whitfield's own hand, dated from May 2021 through February 2023. Each entry recorded a withdrawal from the credit union account. Each entry was labeled by hand. Some entries were labeled tithe. Some were labeled building. Some were labeled benevolence. Some were labeled annuity in amounts that never actually reached Josephine Marlowe's checking account at all. One entry, in March of 2022, was labeled simply Escalade. The ledger, in Whitfield's own handwriting, in his own private accounting, was a confession. The third piece of evidence was the text messages. Agents extracted 11 months of text messages from Whitfield's personal cell phone, which he had voluntarily surrendered after being told, incorrectly, by his own attorney, that this would demonstrate cooperation. There were 413 messages between Whitfield and Josephine Marlowe. Whitfield, April 22, 2022. Sister Josephine, the fund is growing. The Lord is faithful. Marlowe, April 22, 2022. Praise Him. Thank you, Pastor. Whitfield, September 8, 2022. Doing the Lord's work with Raymond's legacy today. Meeting with the building committee now. Whitfield, December 19th, 2022. We are building something beautiful in His name. Marlowe, December 19th, 2022. I cannot thank you enough. On the exact same day as that December 19th text, according to the credit union records, Whitfield had wired $11,000 from the account to a jewelry store in Atlanta. The arrest happened on the morning of May 16th, 2023, at 7:42 a.m. at Marcus Whitfield's residence at 4218 Shady Grove Drive in the East Brainerd neighborhood of Chattanooga. 2 TBI agents, 2 Hamilton County Sheriff's deputies, 1 FBI special agent from Knoxville. Bergeron was the lead. Whitfield answered the door in a burgundy silk robe over pajamas. He was holding a coffee mug that said, "World's Best Grandpa." Cheryl Whitfield was in the kitchen behind him, at the Marble Island in the $410,000 remodel, in her own bathrobe, and would later tell investigators she had no idea where the money for any of it had come from. Bergeron identified himself. He presented the arrest warrant. Whitfield. Agents, I think there has been a serious misunderstanding here. Come in, come in. I am sure we can clear all of this up right now. Bergeron. Reverend Whitfield, you are under arrest for wire fraud, mail fraud, and money laundering. I need you to step outside, please. Whitfield. Brothers, listen to me. This is a matter of church business. Sister Josephine and I have been managing that fund together for 2 years. She has been receiving her monthly distribution every single month. There has been no crime here. Bergeron. Sir, please step outside. Whitfield. Can I call my attorney first? Bergeron. You can call him from the car. Whitfield. My wife needs to know what to do with the dogs. Bergeron. Deputy Yarborough will speak with your wife. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back. He turned around. Bergeron placed the cuffs on his wrists. The coffee mug was still on the entry table. Cheryl Whitfield was in the doorway to the kitchen, holding the granite countertop for balance. Whitfield said, over his shoulder, on his way to the car, quote, "Tell the elders it is a misunderstanding. Tell them not to cancel service Sunday." They walked him down the driveway in the burgundy robe. A neighbor across the street was collecting her newspaper and stopped in her yard with the plastic sleeve still in her hand. A landscaping crew, 3 doors down, killed the mowers.